What is happening, fam? Welcome to week one recap of the second season in 2023 here of the FFFL. And I have a special guest that nobody has met yet. What is your name, sir?
Somebody's had to have met me before. I mean, you've met me before.
Not
I,
in this capacity. This is the
oh, in this
important.
capacity. Okay. Because I'm like going, come on, I did your wedding for goodness sake. If any of these people were at your wedding,
That was awesome.
they might have seen a guy in the middle of the field who was talking to y'all. So I'd like to believe that I'm not this unknown to you, but I am Glenn Hoffman and I am tickled to death to be here on week one.
Well, we appreciate having you. And I think everybody remembers the plane, because yeah, in case you all don't know, we got married on a baseball field. Most of you do know that, but we had planes flying over because the Schaumburg Airport is like right near there. So you made a funny reference that just so happened to be timely as well. Because the ceremony was how long? How long was the ceremony?
If we hit 50, are we including when you guys took off running around the bases?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
15 minutes max.
yeah. I thought it felt like five, but it
It
goes
could have
by.
been. I'm giving
Yeah,
us time for walking and things like that.
yeah. But it was an awesome wedding, and you made it one. You were a big part of why it was so awesome. So we appreciate
Thank you.
having you. I'm glad you decided to join the league. Um, how long have you played fantasy football?
It's so funny. I've started fantasy football leagues that we do as auctions. I've been doing it since, for the most part, we were starting off on a lot of it on paper. And it's in this group that is like, way to go, rookie. And I'm like going, oh, I am a rookie. This is kind of fun. So yeah, I've been doing fantasy football for quite a while. Enjoy it. Now I am a rookie in my NASCAR fantasy league right now. That is
That's
brand new.
amazing.
But for fantasy football, I feel pretty comfortable. But I was excited about being with the family, and this podcast especially was like, I've seen so many different things, but this is the most intriguing part of a fantasy football. I left one of the other leagues where I'm still the auctioneer for, and but I left them because we were only getting together for the draft, and then at the end we helped the winner spend all of his money at a bar of his choice.
Okay,
But everything was on him for that day,
that's cool.
um, including all of our transaction fees and everything like that. So we'd see each other twice a year, and there just wasn't as much chit chatting. So this is a unique opportunity to stay in touch with the family, so that I don't have to just wait for weddings to be introduced.
Right on. Well, speaking of intriguing, behind you is a pretty rad pinball machine, and I know that you are super into pinball. Can you give us a little bit of background on that and how you got into it and kind of the rotation of pinball machines? What goes on?
Greg, it's real simple. I'm an old man, and as an
Okay.
old man who just love, he's hyperactive and he's old, and so that means for my whole life I've been like going, how can I keep my hands busy? And so pinball has been an active part of our lives forever because, like, if my wife and I go out for pizza every Friday night, we've been married for 36 years, so that's a lot of pizzas
Yep.
over that time. But when we would get to the restaurant and we're waiting for the pizza to come out, I'm like, well, I know you, and you know me, and you were with me at everything else we went to. So what do you think about if we would just find a place that maybe has like pinball at it, and we would play pinball while waiting for the pizza to come on out? And
Okay.
so that it's not that's totally to an origin, but that's how we started. And I've been putting that on the web forever. So now I run my own video blog versus the about all pinball and its locations. You've got one of the greatest places in the world in Ontario is right up by you. You can get sushi and play pinball.
Okay.
You've got the World Pinball Expo is coming up in October over in Schaumburg. So I mean, you are the
Okay.
pinball capital of the world.
Did not know that.
And so it is, all the major manufacturers are right there in Chicago in your backyard.
That's pretty
but
cool.
it's me down here who is playing it.
Yeah, right. So it's cool here. Is Sandy also a fan? Is she an avid into pinball as well?
She plays.
Okay.
She she's always played, but like I'm more apt to pop on down here and play a few games or whatever, just to get myself psyched up or whatever before we're going to do something. She, when she comes on down for the evening, will go, I'll play a game. So she'll play a game every night. And like when we just went to our last tournament, she had a girlfriend show up. So that meant she did not participate in the tournament. And she's chatted with her girlfriend instead.
Okay. But she at least obliges you, so that's nice.
You don't stay together for 36 years if somehow or another we don't aren't willing to at least realize that one of us needs to keep active.
Yeah. Well, it was good getting to know you a little bit here on the podcast portion, and we'll get to know you even more as the year goes on, because this is just week one.
Absolutely.
Uh, and speaking of week one, we had a few matchups in week one, and I'm just gonna be up front and let you know there were zero nail biters this week. We normally do, the biggest win and the closest win, but there were zero nail biters. The closest matchup was won by 18 points, which is basically a whole nother player that did very well.
And the crazy one for me was watching uh how does he say his team name? Lyco Lodges?
Licho,
Licho. How
Licho.
Licho, all of a sudden I'm like, how many more points can the Dallas defense keep scoring? I'm like, can they? I mean, they already set an NFL record. The question is going, is it really possible to make up the deficit that he had with just a defense? It
Yeah.
was, but that's the closest thing that kept me biting my nails.
Yeah, and I think I felt that way with a couple where it could go that route. Even mine, I actually felt could have gone that route with Josh Allen, except for it went the opposite way. And
Yeah.
so of all the games, I actually had the largest ass whooping on Kyle's, the Green Bastards. My team scored 108.6 to his 75, so it's almost 34-point victory. Yeah, basically Pollard and New Orleans defense is what helped him, and everybody else is kind of shit the bed this week. It was a weird week one for a lot of players and a lot of teams, but yeah, his was one of them,
Well,
and
Josh
mine was
Allen,
just okay.
three interceptions out of Josh Allen.
Yeah,
You
and a
know,
fumble, I think, too,
yeah,
right?
who sees that coming?
Yeah,
It's like going, I'm like, okay, here we go. And you and then, but then I don't know. I was blown away by that. And then McCaffrey didn't break on the first week, so
yeah, that's true. I'm
you
I'm
know,
happy for that. That was
correct, because that's my predictions, and it's not science or what. I mean, it's science. It's not like mystery. You've got a great pick. He did really well for you this week, but it's for how long? Mm-mm.
Yep, and I'm hoping it's
There's your nail
right.
biter. Which week is the week that he pulls a Rogers and goes, oh, he touched my ankle and he's out?
Yeah, but I got to roll a dice on somebody that good, and he did help me with this victory this week. But
Absolutely.
like I said, even my score was kind of middling for what we could do. I'll take it the W, but it was still kind of middling compared to your score. You actually got the high score of the week, so
Woohoo!
congratulations, sir. That wins you $10, a whopping DS for you, with a 129.2 over Licho, who yes made a comeback with Dallas of what 30 plus points for his
Oh, it
defense.
it it was just. I mean, again, they set a record by halftime, and it was
Yeah,
like going, and you're watching it going. We were outside because we had watched the Packers game and the Bears game, and then we had watched the other games before that. I had a house full, but for the last night, the last game of the night, it was scotch and cigars outside while watching it out there, and you just kept looking up every once in a while, going, "Where does this stop?" And it never did.
yeah, they were relentless.
Yeah.
Wanted to prove a point there, but you
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
I
But
mean,
35 points out of your defense. Clearly, he's going to count on that every week. and that's how he's
Yeah,
going to set his
that's
lineup.
gonna it's gonna tough to do. But you had three players. I mean, you had Anthony Richardson, you had Eckler, and you had Ayuk, who all went for 25 plus points basically. That was huge. I mean, that right there, 75 points amongst only three players. And then that helped kind of vault you to where you were at because then the rest covered the remaining 50, 55.
Yeah, yeah. I was lucky because of the fact that Lyco, Licho,
Licho, yeah.
Licho. I was lucky because Licho just kept none of his players equaled to the points they were,
Yeah,
projected to make.
yeah,
Not a one, except for his defense.
yeah,
And for me, it was a matter of going. I picked my team based upon you give more points for running.
yeah.
So it's like going, how do you feel about Anthony Richard? I don't know. He's a newer guy, so a newer guy will probably be running for his life. He had good legs in college. It's like going, roll the lucky dice. And when you see him walking off the field, holding part of his leg, you're like going, no, 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 not that.
Yeah.
No.
That was the end of the game too. I mean, that was the last minute and a half of the game.
Yep. So I'm waiting to hear from Dr. Sam so I can see whether or not I need to be like, holy crud, scrap the whole team. But then, Ayuk, I don't know what that
Huge
was.
game. That was great. I mean, that was great.
I'm like, if anybody tells me like my 6th-round pick was going to be the guy who helped carry my team, and believes that this is all strategy in week 1,
He has
I'll
me.
I'll point to Ayuk and go, I don't know. I mean, I set up my auto draft, so I had everything laid out. I reset all the rankings. I was ready for how it went down,
Yeah,
but I did not have Ayuk anywhere in there as a guy who was going to help this be the high score of the week.
which is awesome. But nice job. And speaking of Dr. Sam, he actually is the next game we'll talk about. So suck a dick. Got the victory over Casey at Suckadick had 92 points. Casey was about 67 and a half. But he got the W. I think he was the lowest scoring victor of the week this week. So he squeaked by with the lowest score as a person who won. Anything that you took away from that game other than Casey's team just shitting the bed on him?
Well, he had Fields. What?
Yeah.
What? What the heck was that game? I mean, I believe in Fields. I have him in another one of my leagues. I didn't squeak one by. I lost in the other league because of, just people like Fields just doing nothing. If someone would have told me before the game that he was going to do, I mean, he did all right. I think he got like
It was like 16 points or 16 and
right.
a half, something like
I mean,
that.
it's not horrible, but it's like you're just going, where was I don't know. I expected a lot more out of
Yeah.
him, stuff like that. Um, and
When you mentioned draft position when you talked about where you got Brandon Ayuk from, and that's what you also think about is you got Justin Fields earlier in the draft, probably. I think maybe
yep.
fifth round too, though I can't remember. Um, but at that point, you're counting on him to do more than what he did. Because for me, I played Sam Howell. He wasn't great. But he was about middle of the pack in quarterbacks this week for us, and he outperformed Justin Fields. And I picked him up off of free agency after the draft. So,
But I think there's two real questions that came out of the suck a dick game. Okay.
okay,
The one is, why was Penny started?
yeah.
Penny was projected to get 0 points.
Casey
Penny
said he had a wedding or something that he was
Penny
at.
miraculously got 0 points. So
Yeah,
my
yeah.
thing is going, if your projection is 0 and you're expecting anything other than 0, it's like going, I mean, again, I don't believe in a lot of pre-hype in week 1 because we just haven't seen anything yet. But I do say somebody who's not scheduled to play will
Yeah,
probably not score any points.
correct.
And so
Yes.
I'm going to put that one not as a win for Suckadicka, but an absolute loss for
Yeah.
Indianapolis's ability to pay a darn bit of attention.
Yep, that hurt him, and I don't think he had anybody that would have and saved him. But at the end of the day, you still got to be able to not have Rashad Penny and then give yourself a
And the
chance.
thing
And they took Brees Hall out, and Brees Hall had a great game. He had over like almost 130 yards rushing plus a touchdown. I think a couple of receptions. Like he did well, and you sat him for
there
Rashad
had to
Penny,
be
who wasn't going to play.
somebody somewhere, somewhere on the wire, where all what you have to do is do this. Come on, baby, get 1 point.
But you didn't need
That,
to do
that,
that. You
that's
didn't need
all you
that.
had to do.
You
That's
have
all
Brees
you had to do to
Hall.
beat
Brees Hall
zero.
was sitting on his bench, so I don't know why that got to
Right.
play him. But now he knows. So now Casey will play Brees Hall moving
So is Casey
forward.
one of the new people?
No, Casey is he was with us last year,
Okay. So I just was
but
checking.
Samantha,
I didn't want
Samantha,
to
his
pick on a
wife.
rookie.
Well, Samantha and him, like they partner together. She's usually the GM. So Samantha, I don't know if you're a part of this, but you might want to speak up as to whether or not you were a part of the mismanagement of the team because you might co-manage it together. I don't know. I don't know. But we'll move on from bastardizing you now.
Right. But what about then Sutkadita too? I want to know at
Okay.
which point in time. So I said there was two parts about this game.
Yeah.
When does Sutka Ditka stop becoming a thing? Like they were saying now that Gen Zers don't even know what 9/11 is. It's something in the history books. Does anybody get that Ditka was a coach, or is this just a dirty young man working his way through the league? So I'm just asking, how long does that joke stay relevant? And do any of the people watching this still know who Ditka is?
I don't know, but I have a team name in my other league called Dickabuckus.
So I'm
A
just going, at some
Dickabuckus.
point in time, you just go, I mean, don't get me wrong, witty. I mean, it's witty. And
But
for
is it
20,
going over people's heads?
but
Maybe.
did you just sit there and
Maybe.
crack a 9/11 joke and then everybody goes, why? Why do you hate September so bad? And then you find out, oh, there was a tragedy on that day, So
Yeah,
it's,
that's true. Don't think
I'm
about that.
sure there was some really witty 1812 war jokes too that we could still be bringing back, but they're probably not as relevant anymore.
No, no, we would not get them. All right, but something we
all,
will
the, all,
get
the
is
love, all the
fantasy
love for Dr.
football.
Sam.
Yeah. But let's move on to the next game. We have Mahomes Slice at 97.9, just shy of that hundo mark. He beat Allison in field goal, who only scored 79.4. Basically, Herbert Justin was her only bright spot. Everybody else kind of shit the bed. But AJ Brown got 10 targets, so that's always a good thing. That can usually turn into more stuff. And Pittman was on her bench, but played well, so might be able to play him. So she might be looking better next week than she did this first week. What anything you noted?
All what I noticed was like I'll go with my my witty little poem over this one, and it's not a poem, but it's just my line. It says, Diggs tries to dig himself out of the burrow left in this from the Cincy game with Go Dirt, who scored 0 points. So this
Okay.
was all my digging jokes there, all in one
Okay.
line.
Okay.
Because again,
Diggs did well. What are you talking about? Diggs had a
no,
big game.
Diggs dug his way out
Oh,
of the burrow that was left by Go
got
Dirt.
it.
He got 0 points. So there's
But
a
that's
joke.
not this game, Mahomes. This is the Zach versus Allison's. This is Mahomes slice versus field goal.
Yeah, Mahomes sliced. Wasn't that where?
No, he didn't. That's you're thinking of Tyler's team, Tyler versus Andy.
Okay, leave
Yeah.
that in for Tyler's.
We'll edit. We'll edit this. Don't worry. Yeah, this will be so edited.
Sorry about that. Nope.
But
Okay.
no, from Zach's side, the only thing I noted was the zero he got from T. Higgins, who got eight passes thrown his way, but couldn't haul in a single one of those eight. It was bad, but he pulled it out with Mahomes and Chubb leading the way.
Yep.
Oh my! But nice job, Mahomes slice. He was the second lowest winning total, I'll say. So pick it up, Zach. Anyways, we'll move on to The next game, which had a really a major shift in projected points, because I think EJ's team was supposed to get about a buck 15, and they ended up scoring just shy of 90. Not very good, but he had some unfortunate trouble with J.K. Dobbins going down, and he lost to Bob's Bandwagon, who was number 2 this week. He hit his projection almost on the money. So that was a nice game for Bob, and I like Bob's team this year. So I think Bob's gonna have a tough time beating that man.
Well, and I think Cheesehead just got what he deserved.
Okay.
And I don't even know the guy, but he's a cheesehead.
He is.
He played Dak Prescott while benching Love. Now, how do you keep your absolute pride of your Northernland guy when the guy who you should be bleeding cheese all over, Jordan Love, comes out and scores 27.6?
Yeah.
But you went with the Cowboy who came into the game up going, hey, I'm not going to drop as many balls as I used to. He didn't say I'm going to be great this year.
Oh
He
my
said,
God.
hey, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and not have as many turnovers.
Yeah.
I don't understand Dak going into the spot that he got. I think the points he got coming were the 6.52. I still don't trust Dak anywhere throughout the season. I think this is a traditional Dak Prescott thing. You'll see projections of 22 points or whatever, and you'll be like, oh boy, this is the week. And then you'll remember how many times he can really mess up the pass. And
Yeah.
Jordan, I don't know. If I was a cheesehead champion, I would want to be starting this guy.
I agree.
I think he showed he's got something.
Yeah, I actually don't think that's a bad idea right there, man. Like he looked good. Now that was the Bears defense. They do not have a stellar defense. So that you give him that, but he looked good. Like he looked composed. He looked like this is my team. Like everything flowed well. And I would agree. Like he could at least be a starter. And the funny part is he was his last pick of the draft. He literally just like, I already have 2 quarterbacks, so fuck it. I like this guy. Last pick of the draft, Jordan Love, and he could be your starting quarterback, man. That'd be nice.
I
I
mean,
don't
I'm
know that
trying
you
to
would have
think.
won because Tyreek Hill on the other side, it was kind of tough to beat somebody who played
That would have
Tyreek Hill.
switched. That would have switched out the points in that game. He got 6.52, but 6.5 to round it off on Dak, and good
Love got
old
like
Jordan
27,
Love
28.
got 27.6. So
Yeah,
that would have been a 21-point swing. If
yeah.
we add that into there, I guess he wouldn't have made it anyway.
No,
But
would
at
not
least
have.
he would have bled the green and gold like he's supposed to.
but posting a 110, as you can see in this league, I mean, I think there's only 2 people that scored over 110 because I was third in points and I was at 108.6. So you make that QB switch, you're now third in points. You wouldn't have won that game because unfortunately you played, the team that was number 2 in points, but still would have been a good showing. So I would agree. I think Jordan Love's going to be something this year. And like I said, watch out for Bob's team. He's got some good depth in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill
Yep.
can always boom like that, which is unfortunate for other people, but good for Bob. And then again, like I said, for the Cheeseheads, J.K. Dobbins got injured and he is out for the year. So he's got to make another switch there. It might be some running back thrown your way for a trade. Maybe I try to get Jordan Love. What do you think about that? That'd be
Yeah,
nice.
I would. I'm a big fan of keeping a rookie somewhere in the back. To just go, what do I got here? And a rookie that showed some promise. I mean, again, I'm going to go back with.
Well, hold on,
I
hold on, hold the hold the thought. Is
Okay.
he? Because we'll get into waivers here
Okay.
in a
Never mind.
bit. I'd like you to
Never
save
mind.
that one for the
All right.
waivers.
Pause
But
it.
but I like where that's going. So hold that thought because we will
Hold
get
it.
into that. Let's touch on our last game though before we hit the injury report. So we had the Omaha Colt Fins who took that victory of 102.9 over Tyler's team, the FFL, which it should probably say FFFL Redeem Team. Come on, cuz. He had 73 and a half, so did not do so hot this week.
So should I
But
talk about Moon Slice here?
You
Or
should do your
Mahomes.
poem here.
No, I
Your
shouldn't. I
your
already did that. So now should I go back and talk about Mahomes slides? Because the one thing I
Yeah.
realized when my notes were goofed up was they both had people on their team who scored 0 points.
Oh,
You know,
okay. Yeah.
and that's always tough to get a goose egg, but at least it wasn't as bad as the zero that was predicted.
Yeah. There's no slice of the pie in for Mahomes slice with T. Higgins. That's true. But yeah, that's well, it was not just that. So Goddard got zero, but then yeah, the Miami defense I think was negative. I think they had negative 1 point. So that actually hurt the Colt Fins, but they still pulled it out 102.9. So that kind of makes them a little scary because Goddard isn't going to get 0 points moving forward. So they might be near more of that 110 mark when he actually gets a target, gets something. It was weird. Very
Yeah.
weird. But yeah, Joe Burrow also sucked. He was not good.
he, he was not good. And,
Yeah. That was a
and
tough game. Wasn't it raining though? So wasn't it raining that game?
I did not get a chance to watch the Cincy game, so I do not
Yeah, I think
know.
it was like inclement weather. So I think that was a tough part in the game. So that would explain some of the poor play a little bit. But
Sure, sure. Look at how
yeah.
much it rained in Dallas, but yet one team seemed to be able to catch the ball, and the other team it seemed to just. Oh, hold it. Am I confusing my games now? Let me make sure I'm not doing that wrong. So during the Giants game,
It was with
so
Dallas and
okay, good. Yeah,
yeah.
because they just kept squirting out of everything they touched, and yet the other
Yeah.
team seemed to have the perfect
Sticky
solution for a little bit of
hands.
moisture. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, that's the matchups for this past week. Nice job to those who took a victory in week one. It's always nice. It relieves some of that pressure that you might feel about your team. So nice W's for those. And for those who lost, it is early in the season, and week one is not prescriptive to what's going to be happening the rest of the time. But speaking of prescriptive, let's head over to Dr. Sam to find out a little bit more about the injuries of this past week and our injury update from Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Week 1 Injury Report. I'm your host, Dr. Sam. Please note that all of the information provided today was found on the internet and may not be completely factual, as I am no expert. We'll be running through some of the big injuries from Week 1 and how they may impact your fantasy roster. First up, Austin Eckler looked like he sprained his ankle. They're saying he is currently to be determined on Wednesday's practice, depending on if he can go or not. Typically, with running backs, ankles may slow a slight drop in performance for a week. But if it is a low ankle sprain, like we talked about before, he should be back in no time. Anthony Richardson looks like he has a little bit of knee and ankle soreness. Reports say that it's just some soreness and potential bruising, but he should be good to go. Unfortunately, J.K. Dobbins has a torn Achilles after returning back from his ACL repair. He will be out for the remainder of the season. And Aaron Rodgers, at that, just sustained a calf injury, which looks like could be a Achilles injury as well, although MRI will be done soon to report. It was a bad week to be a hamstring, as Aaron Jones and Deontay Johnson both had hamstring injuries. Aaron Jones looked like he was being stretched on the sideline, potentially like he could be able to go in. However, the Bears were in a bad way, so he did not need to come back in. Deontay Johnson, however, his injury may be a little bit more serious as he was immediately grabbing at his hamstring and was taken off the field immediately. Jacoby Myers had suffered a concussion, will most likely be out for week 2 as he was on the ground for quite some time. And typically, when they're on the ground for that long, they're going to be going through extensive concussion protocol. Pat Fryermuth left the game with a chest injury. He may see a drop in performance depending on what his x-rays come back with, whether it's a contusion or potentially a broken rib, but time will have to tell on that one. For some injuries from the last week in terms of going into next week, Mark Andrews, with his quad injury, looks like he should be coming back next week. There might be a slight drop in his performance in terms of his acceleration, but they are expecting him to progress. Cooper Kupp is on the IR for 5 weeks with the hamstring as his injury appeared to be getting worse and not better. And Travis Kelce with a deep bone bruise. Reports came out before that game that the injury was a little bit worse than they anticipated as he was having trouble pushing off in the pool. However, they are looking for potentially 1 to 2 weeks for him to come back. For your non-skilled players, Jack Conklin, the offensive tackle, is out with an ACL tear. Ronnie Staley has a sprained knee, so he will be out for a few weeks. And Charles Cross has a sprained big toe, so potentially some drop in some of the offensive production for those teams because the big offensive tackles are out of the game. Thank you, and we will see you all next week.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sam, for that. That was a great injury update. I think next time we need to talk a little more clearer and into the microphone,
But
Dr.
he's got
Sam.
sexy knees. You got to admit, those are some sexy knees that he's got right there. And if we
Yeah.
could just draw a little face on his knees, we could do the whole knee injury update, and it would stay right in that whole family.
Yes, exactly. To touch on some of those that he hit on, I know Aaron Rodgers is confirmed to have torn his Achilles. He is out for the season. What fantasy impact do you think that has on the Jets? I'd say as a whole, not just obviously he's out, so Rodgers is gone. But what do
He's
you think that
out.
has on the Jets?
Unfortunately, the question is that I think they were stacking the deck to try to have a real Super Bowl run at the Jets. That was the goal. They were
Yep.
buying everything. They were setting it all up for Aaron Rodgers. You know, that we're picking up his favorite targets. We're picking up other things to support the cast. We're going for it. No excuses. Here we go. 4 plays and out. And I believe that's the same way their whole season would go. That we're looking at something. I don't see how you move this around that position. I think from a fantasy point of view, I don't know that anybody was counting on Aaron Rodgers on the first week or so,
Right.
so
Right.
but at the same point in time, there was someone who got him as a late round pick who was like going, I've got Aaron Rodgers. Wait until he proves he's Aaron Rodgers and tears this league up, and I'll have them for the end of the run. And now they have a big hole in there like the Jets.
Yeah, Zach has him in our league, and good thing he's got Mahomes already, so I don't think he's too worried about
Right.
the Rodgers injury. But I agree. I do feel there were going to be those who thought he was a value in the draft, and now he is not that. And for me, I'm the Garrett Wilson owner, so I look at it as ah, I thought I was going to have a potential for a 1,500-yard season with Wilson and Rodgers hooking up and be great. Now it's the
Yep.
Wilson brothers that are having to hook up, and it wasn't awful, but it wasn't what I drafted him to be
Right.
in week one. He almost got 12 points. It's not like I said, not terrible, but it's not. I mean, you're looking for 15 to 18, hoping for that and a half point PPR. So that could hurt running back wise. I don't know. I think it's going to hurt their touchdown chances, but I think they'll get more volume because they won't want to throw it as much with Zach Wilson. So
Yeah, but they'll now expect more running, and because they'll expect more running, they'll be playing the run.
that's
The
true.
one thing that
Yeah.
Rodgers gave you was you weren't just coming rushing in on every play because you had to
Yeah.
respect the quarterback who's been the MVP that many years. We
Yeah.
don't have that now on the other side. So I think every point position takes a severe hit because if they become a running team and if they
Yeah.
go the quarterback way and they start passing the ball, he's no Aaron Rodgers. So the
Yeah.
combination of the two is I personally I wouldn't start a single Jets player for weeks until I see what Jets are showing up because I don't think they know who they are because they did not practice to build a team for this scenario.
Right.
This was not what the plan was.
Yeah.
And so because of that, for anybody to make a prediction that said no, I think there's something there. I'm like, based upon what? If you practice the whole time to run a marathon and now you find out that you have to do it in a wheelchair, how good are you at wheelchairing? It doesn't mean that you weren't practicing for running, but you didn't practice wheelchairing. So I don't see how anybody does anything well on this team until
Yeah.
they figure it out. And I would do it in a flex position maybe, but I'm sure not putting them in as my
go to. I know. So
number
I
one
gotta
in either position. And
I
any,
gotta make that decision now on my end. That's rough. But
yeah,
the only other injuries I do want to notate were actually the last that were non-skilled position injuries, and just to notate it as things to look out for during the season. But I know two linemen, so Ronnie Stanley, and then I can't remember what the other guy's name was, but for the Ravens, two of their five starting linemen got hurt and are out for multiple weeks now. So not only was Mark Andrews not playing, but you had two offensive linemen who are now out as well. And to me, that impacts your offense tremendously. Plus, you had J.K. Dobbins that's out. So you're talking about an offense that's definitely hindered a lot right now in the Ravens. And then he mentioned Jack Conklin, who is the right tackle for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, he's their best offensive lineman there, and a big reason why Nick Chubb can do what Nick Chubb can do. Not saying there's going to be a heavy demotion of Nick Chubb's production. He's Nick Chubb. He's going to be great. But just something to think about with that injury, because I think Conklin is out for is he out for the year? I think he's out for the year. But anyways, so it's a couple injuries to look at. But now let's move on to
but I think you also still, what you also just have to hit is you have to hit over into Mahomes territory. You know, you've got Travis Kelce. I hear maybe he's back this week. Dr. Sam was saying 1 to 2. You know,
True.
this is not the same team. This is not the same team without the guy who's always open. You know,
Yeah.
we watched some of those passes hit players in the hands
Oh,
and
brutal.
just think they're volleyball players and not, you know, like receivers. And so I think that impacts big. But and then the one thing we never cover on their injuries, but like, you know, and it happens a lot in week 1, these holdouts. You know, they just got back Johnson, and that's on the defensive side. So
Oh, Chris
that's
Jones, you mean? You mean Chris
Jones,
Jones for
Jones,
Kansas
Jones. Sorry,
City? Yeah.
yeah, that I picked them up and put them on my bench for the sole purpose of going, will they get him back? If they get
Yeah.
him back, he's the real deal. But
Yeah.
if they don't get him back, he wasn't getting started, and then he would have been off to a waiver trade or waiver pickup somewhere. But now that he's back, once you get Kelce back and you start firing in their normal routine, that's really something. But they've had both injuries and things that aren't covered underneath the injury report, which
Yeah.
is just contractual holdouts and lack of
That's
practice.
true. Yeah, that's very true for the Chiefs. They'll have a turnaround game, I think, this week. Get some things figured out. Mahomes look great, so I'm not worried about Kansas City at all.
He's got to throw it to somebody.
That's true. Um, let's move on to waiver ads. Then, after thinking about some of the injuries that may have happened to these teams, like J.K. Dobbins goes down, so EJ might be looking for a running back, right? It's things like that. So now we're thinking about some of the people we might be able to add off of our current player pool and free agency. Um, Anybody in particular that you saw that you want to talk about in there?
You know, I find anything during week 1 going into week 2 to be just a series of almost you'd be as good as using a divining rod to just hope. It's 12 people team. You know, I mean, there's 12 teams out there who are picking up people to fill up their rosters. I don't know. I mean, how do you pick who's the next great guy? He had a good week this week, but does that mean he's going to duplicate this? Or like what you
Yeah.
were saying with Jordan Love, was it because he was playing against the Bears defense? And so he looks great this week, but he's not going to look so great next week.
Yep.
So, you know, and then you get some of these injuries in which they're going, hey, we're not filling that position. We're going by committee. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so do you pick up the guys? You know, a minute ago they were on the practice wire. Now they're coming on out, but now they're saying, hey, we're not going to replace them. We're going to run by committee with these 3 guys.
Yeah.
You
Very
know,
true.
you pick that up. I don't know. I think this week here, if I was picking somebody off the wire, I would look at my lineup and go, did I really like my lineup when I drafted it? Did I feel good about every one of those decisions back then? Either write it out
Yeah.
and just believe that your original decision was good, because this week's information is barely better than last week's information of what's out there.
Yeah, defensively, we don't know what these teams are. Some might be, but for the most part, we don't know what these other teams, how improved they are, or how much worse they may have gotten. So you are right about that, and I think um, for a lot of it, it is a dart throw, but I think you should be early. Like I would disagree that it's not important. I think you're going to start to see. I'll get like a Roshan Johnson. I think is a good one where he got more work at the back end when they weren't playing. Like it was garbage time stuff that he was getting mostly. But when you saw how he was running and how well they were doing, how well he was doing, you might want to pick up a guy just to say, "Hey, 4 weeks from now, what could he be in this
Oh,
offense?" Right?
but see, that's different then. If you're talking about who you might stash on your bench,
Yeah,
that's different. Now, stashing
yeah.
somebody is different than who are we picking up for week
To play,
2.
like to stream in.
You know,
Yeah, and I
we
can understand that. That's a good point that you're making there too, because that depends on your team right now. And do you have a need right now? Or do you
correct.
have a potential like, hey, I've got a guy that seems to not be involved in the offense, and so therefore I might want to pick up this guy who he could have a role down the road. Yeah, you might be in one of those two
I
positions right now.
immediately changed out my defense because again I was stuck on auto draft because I wasn't there, and I did set my all of my rankings except I didn't set my defenses. And when I
Okay.
saw I picked up the Browns defense, I went, you know, I'm just not believing in this. I
Yeah.
don't see this as being the right defense for me. So I picked up the Jaguars. They did fine for me this week. But then I also picked up at the same point in time, I picked up the Chiefs because of the fact that once the contract negotiations were done, maybe, you
Yeah, they
know,
create turnovers. They create
do I have a
turnovers there.
top 5 defense here once they solve their internal struggles, so to me that was a
Yeah.
combination of looking at what you have for the week and putting somebody in there. Now stashing somebody, we're always looking to stash somebody, like you said, someone who got time in garbage time, who they're at least eyeballing. But I wouldn't start a guy who got good points this week in garbage time because
Yeah.
look, he scored 27 points last week. I'm going to
Yeah.
start ahead of my guy who I thought was better going into this because if they have a close game and they don't get the garbage time, that doesn't translate necessarily that they're going to trust them for this next part.
Yeah. No, there's a multiple running backs where that happened too. Of they were getting a lot of garbage time stuff, and so their numbers look a lot more inflated. But obviously, with J.K. Dobbins out, Baltimore running back, take your pick. Like you said, it's going to be a committee backfield in Baltimore.
I mean,
I
one of the three guys they was on their practice squad. They
yeah,
brought him. They put him on there one week, and now
yep.
it's like going. Well,
Melvin
hold it.
Gordon, yeah,
A minute ago, the coaches said he wasn't
he
that
wasn't
good.
good.
Put him on the practice squad. This week, they're up there saying,
Gotta
we
have him.
believe in the guys we have.
Yep, gotta have him. Uh, but yeah, I also mentioned Kyron Williams as another running back for the LA Rams. He got a lot of run, and it wasn't just garbage time. He was actually getting a lot of play. Seems like they want to move on from Cam Makers over there. They wanted to last year, anyways, but just couldn't. Roshan Johnson, I mentioned him, but the big one actually this week, the only one to really mention is the Puka Nakua. He got 15 targets and caught 10 of them for basically a huge game to start out to go boom. And he's kind of replacing Cooper Cup, and you taking a gamble on is Cooper Cup coming back, or will he be out more time, or what does that look like? Because that might make your decision there as to whether or not Puka is your man.
Yeah, and this is where Dr. Sam's information before the season was really interesting. I've got Cooper Cup as my keeper in my other league when he
Okay.
was just questionable for a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
But now they went from questionable to out to now IR. And now we go back to what Dr. Sam was saying. And what Dr. Sam was saying was it can be as much physical as it is mental and where he's at.
Yeah.
And if you just found out that you went steps back at the beginning of this season already,
Yep.
does that make you even more, worried about what you got down there? I'm very, very, very worried about my keeper, and I
Yeah,
think you're definitely correct. It's like going, but now the question is, was it was it Cooper Cup's position, or was it Cooper Cup the player? Just because of the fact that you can pick up his backup, does that mean you picked up the next Cooper Cup, or did you
yeah,
just pick up the guy who's not Cooper Cup?
yeah. But again, based on your team, might have some guys on there. You're like, hey, I'm willing to drop him. I got at least one player that I'm willing to drop for a Puka Nakua, right? So take your pick on those. A lot
I
of tight
think you're right.
ends. Yeah, a lot of tight ends out there. Was not a big week for tight ends at all. You had no Kelsey, no Andrews. The highest point total was like 14 from a tight end. Nothing
Yep.
spectacular. So
Like
take
you,
your
but
pick.
and do you take a gamble? Like you got Musgrave for Green
Yep.
Bay. You know, he targeted him a bunch of times, or 4 times or whatever. It's a rookie throwing to a rookie.
Yep.
Is this his new favorite little guy out? And he's not that little of a guy, but are you looking at this guy going, maybe he's worth a stash, but do you really waste a spot to stash a tight end? Um,
Right. And that's
you
what I
know,
I usually don't. So I don't normally do that. And I also look at it as Christian Watson was out. Christian Watson's their number one wide receiver. Once he comes back, what does that target share look like for Musgrave? But I liked what I saw, and he could have had even more if he didn't fall before, on that big touchdown pass. Like could have been a touchdown pass, but either way, yeah. But there's a few on there. I mean, look at their game, see if you like somebody. If you want to just gamble, make a switch. As Glenn had mentioned, don't look at the defense because it has no idea. It gives you a stat of what happened this past week, but it has nothing to do with who they play. Like we don't know yet. We need at least probably 3 or 4 weeks at minimum to know. Okay, this defense is, they're hurting on the back end of it, but they can stop the run, right? It's like we won't know that for at least a few weeks.
yeah, there's a data point and there's a trend. A point
Yeah,
is just one point. You need two to at least make a line of any sort to say which way this guy is tracking. And
yeah,
so, in this case here, I've watched too many people in fantasy football try to chase back and forth. Oh, I'll start this guy now. I'll go back this way because they're always chasing what happened the week before. And rarely does that equal out to consistency enough to win the whole thing.
agreed. All right, now we've talked about some waiver. We're gonna get into the comment of the week. Glenn, you had said something to me that really was impactful, and I hope it really hopefully the others feel the same way. But we were talking about comment of the week, and you said I don't really have a comment, but like you were kind of talking about the chatter in our group and what that's like. If you don't mind just kind of talking that just brightened my day when you were talking about
I don't know what part of this brightened your day. All that I said was when you
it.
switched over, you go, look, we're a new group because you added somebody last week or something like that. And all of a sudden my phone started lighting up because it was more chatty than the other one. I've never been in a chat group that is so chatty. It is just, I mean, you guys chat about everything and it is constant. And I refer to it as my junior high girls chat group. So it's like going when anybody keeps going, why is your phone keep going ding, 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 ding? And I'm like, oh, it's the junior high girls. They're all chatting again. And they all go, who's that? And I go, that's my family. It's my family. And it's why I joined the league, which is I wanted to keep in touch with everybody. So
Yeah,
on one hand, I love it. And on the other hand, man,
it
you guys
could
are
be.
shitty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. We will load it. I'm shit last night. So I go to bed early on Monday night. So I'll basically never watch a Monday night game. And so I woke up at like 11 o'clock at night randomly. So after the game's over, I look, I'm like, there's like 75 messages.
I'm like, so I don't know how you pick the best of the week. Um,
Yeah. I picked one that I thought crushed it, and it was some back and forth that was happening yesterday, but Allison ultimately said because I think Andy had basically mentioned how EJ was getting very quiet because he had lost this week and didn't do as well. So Andy was trying to rib him a little bit, and Allison said, "EJ, you can still talk even if your team doesn't do well." Tyler, you get it, right? To me, that was a good dig on Tyler right there that I had to just chuckle at and enjoy.
Yeah, you have to appreciate when they get 2-for-1. That was a double
Yeah,
dig right
yeah,
there. So
it was. So that is the comment of the week. Nice job, Bell. Now, lastly, we always cover the matchups for this coming week in week 2. Just like in regular football, just because you did something week 1 doesn't mean that's how it's going to be in week 2. So covering these matchups might not mean a thing, but there is one major matchup that's happening next week, and that's between you and me, sir. Oh, I
I didn't
hope
want to be
to.
selfish by saying, well, the one I'm the most interested in is the one that I'm in.
Yeah,
But I love this matchup early on because of the fact that I'm just like going, you scored well last week. I lucked out and scored well. I have no idea if I can do it again, but I love being the rookie coming in and knocking out the commissioner. So there's
yeah.
a certain amount of pride there that would be extremely happy if that one were to go down.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to play Brock Purdy. It's Brock Purdy or Sam Howell for me right now, unless I do something different on the waiver wire. But I'm gonna play Brock Purdy. But you have Brandon Ayuk, who had a great game this past week, and I mean, he
Yep.
was Brock Purdy only got like 19 points. He did well, got 19 and a half, but what Ayuk got 29 and a half, I think, something like
Mhm.
that.
Yep. Yep.
So, this is where we kind of talk about some gamesmanship and some strategy of you're already playing Ayuk, so you're probably going to play him anyways. But normally, I do like to see if I can play a receiver against the quarterback I'm facing to maybe minimize some damage that might happen. For example, if last night you had Stephon Diggs and your
Right.
opponent had Josh Allen, you won out big time because I think Josh Allen ended up with barely over 10 points because of all those turnovers. But Stephon Diggs had a huge game. He had like 10 catches for 100 and some odd yards and what, at least one touchdown, something like that. So he had a huge game where you kind of counterbalance that. No one else did well. So you try to play it off the other quarterback just to, like I say, either minimize damage or have what happened happen, which is kind of taking the power away.
I agree. I'm not too worried about Purdy
I
because of
know.
Ayuk. And so to me, that line almost neutralizes each other. So now what I look at is going, okay, what are my other runs? So I was very interested in Sam's injury report. Sorry,
Okay.
Dr. Sam's
Dr.
injury
Sam.
report.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to hear more about what they were saying about Anthony Richardson.
Oh,
Because
yeah. He'll play. I guarantee he'll play.
so if he's in and he's playing, and that was nothing more than, okay, that hurt a little bit. I'll get used to this.
Yeah.
Um, then I see that as being unanswered by your side of the field. So
Right.
I'm in good shape there.
Yep.
So you've got a better quarterback, but I'm neutralizing it. So then
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
got a better
much rather have Anthony Richardson. Much rather.
I
If you want
better
to
have a
trade,
better
I'm
I have a
happy to trade.
right. I have a better running, which we score well for running quarterback. I think I can get you there. But then I
Yep.
go to my next guy, who is also questionable in
Yeah.
the form of Eckler.
Yeah.
I named my darn team after the feller. um, and he's questionable also. You know,
Yeah. Sprained
and I
ankle.
know and I know Dr. Sam said 74% of them still play if they were on on the questionable list or
Yeah.
some stuff like that. That's the way I heard it. Um, but they also said that that might mean that he's not completely up to speed or he's worried
Right.
about where he's
Yep.
tender. So if that's the case, then you got McCaffrey. Now, McCaffrey played like mad last week. And so in that lineup across there, I've got a guy who could be tender, and you've got a guy who will break.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I'm
hoping so.
playing you in week 2, and he's not broken yet. And so it's a matter of going, I think I got real problems in that position. So I think this is going to be an interesting game more than just because it's you versus me or whatever. It's
Sure.
because of the fact that um, we have our equals in where things are risky and not, and your whole team looks healthy. Like I see no questionable stats
I hope
on,
so.
on any of yours, and I see at least my 1 and 2 player on my list have these giant
Yeah.
red letters next to it, and the school teacher in me says that can never be good.
Well, we train hard and we keep up on our nutrition on our team, so we try to stay healthy.
Good for you,
Um,
man. I
yeah,
think mine are out drinking too late or something because they get injured too early in the first week.
yeah. Well, a couple other matchups that I'm looking at are well, we have Tyler's team, the FFFL Redeem team, and versus Case's Aces, and those two teams scored the lowest points in week one. So one of them has to win. So one of them will come out 1-1 after having a rough week one. So
And the
that's
big
positive.
question will be is will they both fill their roster?
Yes, I think that will be an important factor as to whether or not one of the teams will win or could definitely lose if they don't. Very
We'll
true.
start there. That's the secret.
Yes.
Do they both show up with teams on their roster, or did or is life going to interfere again?
Yeah. Another one I'm looking at is Bob. So one thing we didn't mention with Bob's team is that he actually has Tua Tagovailoa as well, and he played Lamar Jackson over Tua. I don't know if that will happen again because if he had played Tua, his team would have scored almost 150 points if he had played Tua instead of Lamar Jackson. So it'll be interesting to see if Bob plays Tua over Lamar this week versus Suckaditka. Um,
So
and
do
then
you believe it? Do you believe in Miami?
I do. It's proven that when Tua's in there and they're healthy, like they roll. Like that's it was proven last year and it was been proven again this year. Him and Tyreek have a connection. What's not proven is the consistency of Jalen Waddle. But it's kind of funny because he had 4 catches for like 80 some yards or something like that. I mean, it wasn't awful, but he only got 4 catches, whereas Tyreek went off. So yeah, but I believe in him.
Okay.
You don't
So
seem so
would you
sure.
would you have last week? Would you have started them compared to Lawrence?
So he has Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. Sorry,
So
I should pull up
actually,
his. I
yes.
should
So
I should
yes.
pull up his team while we're talking about him.
So yes, and here's why. So I would have started him for two reasons, actually. I would have started Tua because I have Tyreek Hill, and I want that stack because if Tyreek Hill goes off, guess who's throwing him the football? It is Tua. That's one reason. The second reason is actually because Houston last year was, and I don't know if they improved their defense a ton with defensive players. Will Anderson, yeah, they added in the draft, and he's a great defensive lineman. So that one, yes. But like Houston was like the worst team to play against for quarterbacks and wide receivers last year, and it was because they were so bad that people just ran the football on them in the second half. So a lot of fantasy football does come, in my mind, comes down to the number of plays that we get in this game towards your player is a big fat is huge. It's like I was kind of an idiot. It didn't work out for me, but Devonta Smith in my other league, they were playing against New England. Well, New England notoriously plays a slow run the clock down game. Well, that's a big deal in fantasy football if that means that that other team is getting 10, 15 plays less than normal. That's a big deal. But anyways, so like I didn't play Devonta Smith, didn't work out, but that's how I think about a lot of these things when it comes to the matchup. So yes, I would have played Tua for that other aspect that the Chargers and the Dolphins were just going to throw the ball. They were just going to air it. I mean, Justin Herbert was a good player for Allison this week because he also had to throw the ball. I mean, I think they combined for what 800 passing yards or something like that in the game. That's crazy. So
Okay.
yes, I would have, but I also would not have drafted Lamar Jackson and Tua Tagovailoa because if I drafted Lamar, I'd have waited till like my last pick to pick a quarterback because I assume you're thinking that Lamar's your starter.
And that's where I got. That's why I'm asking the question because if if I was the guy who started him week 1, I'm writing it for a couple weeks. I want to
Sure,
see where this
sure,
goes. I don't want to
sure.
be chasing the points.
Yeah,
And so if you would have started them, then I would agree with you that you should probably. But I think when you have two solid quarterbacks, this is a perfect example of that position. If you follow every week where you're jumping back and forth, and in fact, what I normally end up doing is when I realize who I'm starting, then I put my other guy up for trade. And I
yeah,
see who's willing to take a good trade. Someone needs help in that position, but I
yep,
don't need to be cursing myself with the weekly, which one do I do this week?
yeah. That's true. That's very true. Um, but yeah, other I didn't notate any other matchups for this week. I mean, it's still early in the season. Everybody's a divisional matchup, just so you all know. So it's all divisional in your matchups this week. So nothing to really notate there because everybody's in a divisional matchup. So
Okay.
but yeah, just so everybody's aware. So these are usually more important games because they're within division, right? So when they're divisional opponent, you want to really make sure that you win on those. But Glenn, that wraps up our podcast today. I appreciate having you on. You had some really great insights, especially some based thoughts on how to approach this game because a lot of people are either new to it or maybe just it's always good for me to hear a different point of view when it comes to how you approach fantasy football. So I appreciated that.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for letting me be part of this. I look forward to playing against everybody. I would like to throw down right now that I bet you $5 I beat you.
All right. So the challenge is up there for anybody to
No,
bet.
to
Oh,
you right now.
oh yeah, I'm in. $5.
Okay. Thank you. I
Five
wanted it. I
bucks.
wanted it on film, so I had it, so that I would sit there and I'd be like going, "Let's see where this one goes." And we'll see if I cover this every week for everybody, depending on what week 2 looks like. Because I do not believe because stats on week 1 were good, that means week 2 will be worth a darn.
I'm with you. Don't give up on these players that you drafted highly because they had a poor start to the year. They will usually bounce back from that. And speaking of that, actually, again, I'll plug it, but Andy and I do daily fantasy lineup every week, every Sunday. So anybody wants to join in on that, just $5 to enter. I did beat Andy this week. We both actually had Tyreek Hill in our lineup. He scored almost 40, but that kind of offset. We both had Tyreek Hill and Chris Olave in our lineup, so it was offset. But otherwise, I took advantage of him. I played the correct Washington Redskins or Commanders, my bad, running back in Brian Robinson, and he played Antonio Gibson, and that was the difference in the game at the end of it. So I'm up $5 on him, so I'm willing to take the $5 against you.
Just send it this way. Just send it this way. I appreciate the donation. As you can see, my room is not as brightly lit as your room, so clearly I need the money to
Right.
keep the lights going. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, Glenn. It has been a pleasure, and I look forward to kicking your ass this week.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great week. And
Yeah. Peace out, fam.